the bandwidth.
Yeah, it's fine. So, hi, it's Peter Mead, and welcome to the Australian Search Marketing Academy, the webinar put on by Semrush for the SEO community. And thanks to Semrush for doing that. But today, I'm really excited. We've been hosting these webinars now for a little while. This topic is something that's fascinated me for years, and I've tried all sorts of combinations. And so when Arsen said he had the secret sauce, I so excited. But so the topic, obviously, which is the name of the webinar, which is the WordPress topics and structure. So let me introduce Arsen. And so Arsen has a wealth of knowledge at WordPress. He's the founder of Top Hat Rank, and he's based in Los Angeles. He's been prominent in the SEO community for years. I met Arsen in Finland, and since then I've been involved in several conversations, and some of the things that he says have really stuck in my mind about just the way to do SEO. So welcome, Arsen. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And how are you today?
Turn up the volume here.
How's,
good. Thanks for having me.
Los Angeles? Yeah.
Los Angeles is good. We're having nice sunny days, so a good change. But most of the time, we are sunny here in Los Angeles.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to introduce Jine. So Jine is going to be co-hosting with me today. So Jine understands the Australian search landscape, being based in Melbourne, a digital search manager at REA Group. And so she'll be joining as a guest expert alongside with me. We're going to be asking lots of questions of Arsen. So welcome, Jine. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi. Yeah. Me and Peter is in the same city, which is Melbourne. And now it's like 10 o'clock in Melbourne time. The weather is kind of okay, but a bit cold today.
Yeah, it's because it's starting to head toward the winter months. Yeah, thank you. So the topic today, Arsen, who's going to be giving a presentation about WordPress topics and structure. And so there'll be a slideshow available about how this is all about WordPress information architecture and topic organization. So we want to avoiding the focus, confusion, and improving search results, right? As obviously that's why we're doing all this stuff. But as I said, this topic has this subject's really been on my mind for several years, and I have read a lot and thought about this a lot. So I'll be really, really interested. Arsen, what's your take on this? Can you give us the intro, or how should we think about this stuff?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll cover a lot of this obviously in my talk, but yeah, this is something that we do a lot of audits. We work with a lot of bloggers, and since February, March update of last year, it's picked up for us. A lot of bloggers, lifestyle bloggers, recipe bloggers, anybody who blogs primarily, and even sites that and people who are not bloggers, just business owners, have been coming to us because they've been negatively impacted by these updates. And what we're seeing as we're doing this cleanup is a lot of reorganization of pages and how they relate to each other. And through that, we've been seeing a lot of really good responses based off of what we're seeing in terms of increases in rankings. So as the updates started happening month over month, we started noticing that organization and really matching query intent and providing a place that matches every single aspect of your buyers or readers' journey and the queries that they might perform during that decision process, being able to match that with content and pages on your site has become much more important. And we'll cover all of this in my talk.
Terrific. Sounds amazing. So, Jine, just a question for you.
Yeah.
When you've worked with WordPress, is this something also that you're finding about this organization, the structure of the website, how important that is?
Yeah, so now like our website actually is not built in WordPress, obviously, like realestate.com.au, but we do have a section which is called lifestyle, guide and news. In that part, we actually use WordPress to build it in because we find our WordPress is actually very good for news content and lifestyle content. So even though our major website, which is the listing part, is not built by WordPress, but the content part is still built by WordPress, which is great for editor to edit the content and publish, and also easy to pin for Google and better for ranking. But before I joined REA, I actually worked on Strat Media, and then a lot of our clients, I would say like more than half, 50% of our clients, and they are all built by WordPress.
Yeah, it's very popular, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well, Arsen, we're ready. If you want to start your presentation, we're ready.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. I am having a little bit of a technical difficulty here, as always. But we should be good here in 1 second, guys.
No worries.
All right, so we're jumping into this, yeah?
Great. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm gonna hit this button, and you guys tell me.
You're sharing the screen.
Yeah, I should have shared the screen first, probably. All right, let's share the screen, and we're gonna share screen 2, and
yes, I can see a mountainous landscape, like a desert in the background. Here we go. Yep,
all right,
I can see your slides now, Arsen.
Okay, perfect. That's us, right? That's all of us in there. Good.
Yes.
All right. Well, as Peter has already introduced me, my name is Arsen. I blame my parents for my very unusual last name, but I am an SEO, and I do a lot of audits. I also run a digital marketing agency out of Los Angeles. We work with a lot of really cool brands, and we specialize in innovative digital marketing techniques for brands of all sizes. We are also award winners. We took home 2 awards at the Interactive Marketing Awards in March in Florida. We won for Best Low Budget SEO Campaign and Best SEO Campaign. So I'm very proud of that and my team. And with that, are you guys ready to get started with my super interesting presentation?
Absolutely. And congratulations, by the way, for the... yeah, I mean, you must feel like these couple laughing on the couch, right? Absolutely. Very excited.
Yeah, we were very excited too. We knew we were shortlisted, but we weren't expecting to win on the first round. So very proud of my team. So let me change the mood here a little bit, and let's get into the current state of SEO. And we've all seen this tweet from Danny back in March of 2018 when the update started rolling out. And he kind of sets the tone for us with this, right? That they released a broad core algorithm update, and we do these routinely several times per year. But it was a little bit more than several times per year. We had updates March, April, May, July, August, and what we're noticing here as a recurring theme is we're noticing that a lot of these updates have to do with quality. And then when we thought that, hey, Google to take a break, Google didn't, and they served us up another set of updates. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, and even now in April, we're seeing updates again and again. Quality, 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 quality. And this is what these updates typically did to a lot of the sites that we work with that came to us after these updates. And take a look at this. This is a February, March drop-off. Look at that huge drop-off, right? And this reflects in their traffic as absolutely in their traffic. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to interrupt me through this, feel free to do so. I would love to have a conversational approach to this. So don't let me talk all the way through
no,
this.
Thank you. Thanks, Arsen. Yeah, I'll probably be mesmerized, but I will certainly be asking questions at the same time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, based on the update, you just put it all those like quality and quality and quality. Yeah, and we do we do have some impact. Like we see some impact, like really big impact in on the April update as well as the September update. So the April update we figure out is more around not just quality, but also the relevancy of the content. Like, for example, if you are talking about fitness and all those kind of things, and you might need to have video embedded in your content, which will impact your ranking. Like, for example, if we are talking about design and idea kind of things, you need to have the most up-to-date content, which is the design trend and the ideas. And also you need to have a lot of image on your post, which like we see a big drop on the April update. And then we actually redo our content and update our content, and then we pick it up like pretty quickly after that. And on the September update is more about quality though, I think.
Correct. Yeah. And then you're absolutely right. So, and then this is what it kind of translates to when we look at the traffic and the losses that happened during these fluctuations. And absolutely, Jin. So like what you were saying, in Google's eyes, quality means relevance, right? Google doesn't necessarily say that, oh, your site is crap, right? Your site is really poor quality because you're right, like a 2-year-old. Maybe, but to Google, it's more of relevance, right? And then relevance at the same time really means matching query and its intent, right? So for me and for us, for our team, going in leaving 2018 and going into 2019, we are looking at things a little bit differently. We're looking at things from a perspective of how well are we accommodating not only the query but also the intent of why the query is being performed, right? So if quality is relevance, relevance is matching that query. And to better explain this, we can take a look at this, right? So if I was to say, Jin, find a 16 millimeter red marble. Which one, left or right? Which one would be easier for you to do if you need to find a 60 millimeter red marble?
Right.
Right, because things are organized, right? So the right one is a better environment for you as a user, right? And we can safely assume that applies to search engines. So typically with WordPress, and that's what we're talking about, WordPress organization and structure, typically when we're looking at WordPress, and most of the time, we see this kind of a flat structure architecture to a site, right? Where a lot of the posts live in the root of the site, right in the root. But when we start organizing topics and websites and creating this kind of a siloed structure, we start creating an environment where things are a little bit more organized and makes much more sense to users and search engines. And to better show this, I created a little, well, I didn't create the website, but Peter's Marble Store, by the way, domain is available if anybody wants to start a marble store, Peter. But if we're looking at Peter's Marble Store, as you can see, everything is in the root, right? His top level page that shows all of the marbles that are blue and red, and then the individual product pages for the 14 millimeter blue marbles or the 16 millimeter red marbles. All of it is in the root, right? And when we look at the URLs, that's how they present themselves, right? They're all sitting on the same level. Now, when we start organizing things into content groupings or theming or siloing or informational hubs, whatever you want to call them, right? If we're creating organization to this, then it starts to make a little bit more sense, right? We know that all of our 14 millimeter blue marbles are in the blue marble silo, and the 16 millimeter red marbles are in the red marble silo, and so on and so forth, right? And if we zoom into that, this is what our URLs are going to look like, right? So red marbles is in the root, and then 14 millimeter red marble are in the red marble sorry, 14 millimeter marbles are in the red marble silo. So we're creating organizational path using the URLs, right? And this signals something interesting, right? And to other search engines and to users as they look at this, they're showing that these 14 millimeter marbles are red marbles, right? They're not blue, they're not green. And I also want you, a little bit off topic, I want you to take a look at what's happening here. Which word are we overusing here in how this is organized? We're using marbles way too many times, right?
Yeah.
We try to avoid that. We call that panda food. We try to avoid that. So when we take on a client and we start reorganizing things, we start cleaning or de-optimizing URLs. So in this slide, I'm showing you what the URL path is and what the breadcrumbs, when properly applied, and we'll get to breadcrumbs a little bit later in this presentation, but when properly applied, the breadcrumbs are sending the appropriate topical signal for each page to Google, while the URL path is still nice and organized, but is not over-optimized, right? So why does this all matter, right? We need to understand why we're doing this. And here's an example. This is a client that we worked with years ago, so I'm okay showing this. But when we dug into their site, and they obviously they're in the beauty space, and they do all the injectables and cosmetic stuff, right? And when we started digging into their website, and this is a very unorganized slide, but I had no better way of showing this data. So when we started looking into the URL, if we can see in the address column all the way on the left, right? Here are all their URL, all in the root, and those are the titles, and that's the H1 and the H2, right? And we can see that the naming convention, and the organization, and all of that, right? But if we look at the bottom of the slide, if we look at the keywords and their positioning, look at this keyword, Juvederm Los Angeles. Google is ranking Juvederm products as the most relevant page for Juvederm Los Angeles. And if we look at Juvederm products in the top portion of the slide, we see that it's not properly optimized, right? It doesn't it shows the right signal, but it's not properly positioned, right? Because if I was to search for Juvederm Los Angeles, and even if this page was to rank, when I land on that page, it's not going to provide the experience that I'm looking for. Same thing can be applied to Juvederm, lip Juvederm before and after, right? So the intent here, the clear intent here, is to see the before and after pictures. But look at the URL that Google is selecting, right? It's selecting Juvederm. So if we look up, it says Juvederm lip augmentation Los Angeles, Juvederm FAQ and photos, right? Even though there's already a page on their site that says Juvederm before and after photos, right? So this is like a good example of topical mismatch. And again, there's other factors that apply, but if we just, as an example, look at this and look at how can we reorganize this so it makes a little bit more sense, right? So the current path versus the organized path. And in the organized path, if we're looking at the third level, Juvederm products, what we did here is we organized it into Juvederm and then products. So products, photos, and FAQs all belong to the parent of Juvederm. Now this makes more sense, right? So the real difference, at least for us, with silo and flat architecture is that with silos, you can do content grouping and theming a little bit easier. You can reinforce the topical focus to show Google, this is how much information we have on this topic, on Juvederm or on red marbles, right? And it also helps with preventing topical confusion. Pretty easy, right, to grasp, but it's not the best thing to do if you're already running a site that's generating traffic. Well, it's ranking and it's generating traffic, because if you're going to be reorganizing your URLs, you are essentially going to be creating a lot of 301 redirects. And unless we really do that, right, we want to avoid that as much as possible, because on a site that's already ranking and a site that's already getting traffic and probably making money, anytime we're going to 301 redirect one thing to another, it's going to lose its ability to rank.
I'm so glad you
and then come
have
back.
said
So we're
that,
always like
Arsen, because I get this a lot, where it's kind of so easy for people to just jump in and change the URL, and then Yoast or something will do an automatic redirect for them. And so what I find is people don't understand the impact, they think, oh, it's fine. There's a 301. It will,
Yeah.
you know. But what they don't realize is they have now relocated all of that content to a new URL. So everything's changed. So now the document, Google was rating that previous document. Now it needs to go and rate it all over again.
Absolutely. And you're essentially waiting for all of that to update, and meanwhile you're missing out on all that traffic. So one of the things that we do in-house, we prefer to use breadcrumbs as a way to reorganize topics. And breadcrumbs are essentially what we consider as a secondary signal to URL level organization. And by properly structuring breadcrumbs, we can show the appropriate relationship between the current page and other above and below the page that we're optimizing, right? So we can show a relationship within the hierarchy. And if you remember this slide from earlier, right, we created this hierarchy for the red marbles, right? We showed that 14 millimeter marbles live inside of red marbles, right? And the same would apply to the silo for blue marbles or whatever have you. And breadcrumbs we really like breadcrumbs. We do a lot of work with them. So for us, they're not only important towards organization, they also create really important internal linking structure, and that structure is like this,
you're right,
where
Arsen.
you have.
Sorry. Yeah, I just really want to add on to like a really good for breadcrumb, because as last time I chat with Gary from Google, and he really is saying that breadcrumb is a highly recommended things we need to implement on the website to actually show your site structure, which is like awesome. And also when you're talking about the schema markup, it is really good as well, because when you actually have the schema markup for your breadcrumbs, your URL will look a lot nicer in Google search result, which is great.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here we're showing that the marble store breadcrumb path for the red marble URL points to the homepage for Peter's marble store, right? So we're showing that the red marbles are a part of Peter's marble store. And then on the third level, we're showing that the 14 millimeter red marbles live inside of the red marble. So we're providing a relationship and structure and hierarchy to this. And at the same time, just like Jine said, schema markup, when properly applied to your breadcrumbs, will create these really awesome snippets in search results, right? And this is what those look like. And those are a byproduct of the proper markup that is applied. And Yoast will do this for you. And Yoast will do this in JSON-LD. What I'm showing here is the markup in HTML, right? Microdata. But if you're not using Yoast, sucks to be you. You should probably look into something else that's going to help you with your breadcrumbs. I'm not advocating that you should drop everything and switch to Yoast. If you're using whatever other SEO plugin, continue using it. Don't switch, but take a look at other sources of creating breadcrumbs for yourself.
I agree. It's so easy to do. Yoast makes it's right there for us with a little bit of code, and it's all done. So
absolutely. But before you go and start changing stuff around, run one of your post pages through the structured data testing tool and just Google it. This URL is way too long to be useful, but just Google it and search for a structured data testing tool, and then put in your URL for one of your posts and see if you already have breadcrumbs activated. A lot of times when we do these audits, we're noticing that WordPress users just go in through Yoast settings and they activate the breadcrumbs, but they never actually implement the breadcrumbs to show on page. So go in and check and see if you already have the markup, if Yoast is throwing that markup into your site. And if it is, make sure that don't want to mark up something that's not there. Inside of Yoast, you will see inside of Yoast, inside of the settings screen, if you go to breadcrumbs, and then you enable them and all kinds of like preferences. And I gave you links here on how to links directly to content from Yoast on how to set up your Yoast breadcrumbs. And then also, and this you should probably do with a developer if you're not comfortable doing code level changes. but this is how to customize your breadcrumbs, because Yoast will create breadcrumbs based on how the URL is structured. It will try to mimic the URL. So if you don't have your categories inside your URL, the breadcrumbs will not show that. So you will need to do a little bit of optimizing to get that going. But it is work, and that you do need to do it. And how are we doing on time, Peter? Are we still good?
Absolutely. We have plenty of time, and
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect. Good. I'm glad the memes are landing this time.
it's
all right.
Yeah.
So the question that gets asked is, okay, Arsen, so now I kind of understand what I need to do, right? But like, how do I really figure out which topics and how do I get all this information? And why is this important also, right? Because we do want to, and I'm quoting myself here, if you do want to do this properly, you want to pay attention to information architecture. You want to pay a lot of attention on how things are siloed, and your breadcrumbs and your internal linking and everything else. And you can get all of that from your competitors. So you can use links so you can take a look at who's number one for your term, right? I use this program called Dynamapper. It's paid. They do have a free trial. I encourage everyone to try it out. What it does is it just crawls the sitemap and creates these really awesome visual representations of how topics are organized, right? So if you're looking at who's number one on Google, right, and we can all assume that if he's number one or she's number one, number two, number three, then probably they're doing something right. And Google's gotten so good at evaluating and matching up sites and pages with users' intent and their query that we can safely do this and assume that if Google's selecting them, then probably they're doing something right. So understanding how your topics are organized, how your competitors are organizing topics, is super important right now. Dynamapper is one of the tools that I use to create visual sitemaps. At the same time, if you're using Semrush or Screaming Frog, you can crawl your competitor's website to collect as much data as possible, and you should do this as a part of your competitive analysis. But here we're essentially trying to extract organization and how things are structured as far as topics are concerned. So like in Screaming Frog, if you are using Screaming Frog, you can use a tree view to really get an understanding of how things are organized using folders, right? So here we're looking at Skybound. Skybound is the maker of The Walking Dead, and the entire franchise. So they do have a lot of content on their site, everything from comics to games to television, right? So for us, it's super important to understand how they're organizing their content. At the same time, as you're looking at that, you can also take a look and try to find the page that is ranking number one by putting it into Screaming Frog, and you can get an understanding of where that page lives within that architecture, right? So you can now understand what are its relationships to the pages above it and below it in the hierarchy. But sometimes you don't have competitors that are organizing things into silos. They're keeping things in the root, and they're still ranking, right? And just like before, if you guys remember, breadcrumbs are essential to this topic organization. And most of the time, 99% of the time, I can guarantee you that if they're ranking 1, 2, and 3, then they're doing proper organization. So breadcrumbs can be extracted using custom extraction in Screaming Frog. In configuration, you would just click on custom and then extraction. This is really cool. I really like using this. I'm not a developer, so a lot of this terminology is foreign to me. I usually bug my team of nerds to help me with this stuff. But here we're looking at, and you'll notice the theme here. We do work with a lot of cosmetic and plastic surgery brands. But here you'll see that we wanted to extract how things are organized on the plastic surgery channel. So they are also, I think they were at that time keeping everything in the root, but they were organizing things properly using their breadcrumb architecture. So what we did is we wanted to see for each post how they're categorizing and where they're organizing it. So when you find that breadcrumb where you see number 1, you right click on it, and then on number 2, you right click again, and then number 3, you select copy selector, right? And then there you can copy that into Screaming Frog's custom extraction screen. And again, here's a link, because this is a lot to explain and digest right away. And these slides will be available, but definitely use this. This is really awesome. So here you can tell basically between CSS path and XPath, you can extract what the breadcrumb is, its URL, and the text in the link, right? So as a result, this is what it's going to look like. And above, where you see BC2 anchor 1, BC2 URL 1, BC3 anchor 1, BC3 URL 1, right? So we're looking at the breadcrumb, the anchor, and the URL for each post, right? This way you can extract your competitor's organization and apply it for yourself. At the same time, internal links are like super, super, super important, because internal links also convey a certain amount of signals to help Google and other search engines and users, obviously, understand how things are organized on your site. And links should definitely not be overlooked. And again, they are super important to really understand how things are structured, because when you're looking at your competitors' setup, there's a reason why they're ranking for specific keywords. And if it's not clear to you by doing all of the above, take a look at their internal linking structure. Again, with internal links, super important to export all of them for the page that you're competing against, to see how things are being structured. Pay close attention to the anchor text, right? What's the topical signal that's being passed through the anchor text? And at the same time, be mindful of the reasonable surfer model. And the reasonable surfer model is essentially Google's way through to algorithmically understand which links at which parts of the page should get more priority, right? Which link is more likely to be clicked. Basically saying that links in your footer are less likely to get clicked than links in the header or top of the page or in the body of the page. So it's going to pass less authority, quote unquote, if we want to call it that for all intents and purposes. They will pass less authority through the links that appear in the footer than links that appear in the body or at the top of the page. And our friends at Semrush also do a really good job of, if you are going to use Semrush to audit your competitor's website, they also give you a really awesome way of understanding which pages on your competitor's website are passing the most internal link rank, right? So it's also really cool to see which informational hubs they're using to distribute internal links to the pages that they're trying to rank. But again, go ahead.
Arsen, can I jump in with a question?
Sure.
Just quickly. No, we got a question from one of our audience, and I just thought before we go too far through, I'll throw the question to you, since you were talking about the URLs before. It's from Tony McCreath. Hi, Tony. Thanks for the question. But if you don't mind, Arsen, I just want to throw this to you, because Tony's asked, how do you deal with churn of URLs with a nested folder URL structure? So, for example, category URL changes will affect all sub-pages. Moving a page from one category to another will change its URL, right? So if they change into different categories,
depends on how the URL itself is being written, because you can have posts appearing in categories, but the actual unique URL or the slug, well, not the slug, but the permalink for the post might not have the category in its path. But if it does, it's a decision that needs to be made on the case-by-case basis. We're faced with this all the time, where you might have like a post about bacon potatoes, let's say, as an example, right? And that post lives in the category of, let's say, soup, right? And now we want to move it to a category called potato soup, right? So if the category is being thrown into the URL where it's xyz.com/soup/bacon potato soup, and now you're going to switch it, you need to switch it so it makes more sense, so it's better organized, to a category that's potato soup, so it's xyz.com/potato soup/bacon potato soup, or whatever have you. In that situation, you need to really kind of take a look at it from a perspective of, hey, is this post currently ranking the way it is now? Is it bringing in traffic, and does it have backlinks pointing to it? If the answer is no to both, then feel free to redirect, because you're not going to miss out on much, right? To create a new category and move that post to be in that new category, which will, the URL or the permalink for it, and then you can create the 301 redirect. But that in that situation, it makes sense. But if that post is already ranking and it's bringing in traffic and it has backlinks, then don't touch it. What's the point? Why try to fix something that's not broken? So that's why I give this warning when I say, hey, don't start going in there and redirecting things just because you feel like you should redirect them, right? Does it make sense logically to do this, right? Is it going to better the post? We see a lot of the food bloggers that we work with, they're constantly updating their post titles and links, post titles and categories are set up in a way where, and they don't have any backup for this either. There's no way to come back up for them to even notice, but they changed the title of the post and now it changes the slug of the post. So now there's a new URL, and then they come back to oh my God, I lost all this traffic. Well, yeah, because you're not #1 anymore, because the post was ranking #1 and now you changed its URL. You didn't redirect, right? To Google, this is a really bad signal, right? So to answer your question, it does need to be a business decision, but definitely look at, hey, is this, be like a what's her name, Marie Kondo, right? Does this post bring me joy? Right? Does it spark joy?
So that's a great way of explaining it, but really everything you've explained there says a lot to me about the way that we do SEO, the way that we approach SEO in general. It's got to be that you need to be evaluating things as you're doing them. It's not about going in and jumping in and making ground shifting changes all the time. So yeah, I guess what you're saying is reflecting just the general SEO approach.
Yeah. And, it's something that was over the years has been instilled in me, and something that we constantly are seeing in the data that we're extracting from sites, and what we're seeing as a response to reorganizing and moving things around and trying to see what the competitors are doing. Is there a better way to present this data to the user and to Google? Does it make sense for this post to live here versus somewhere else, right? Or are we covering topics in their entirety? And you just logical at all times, because just following best practices is not going to get you there, right? The best practices aren't always best if you're not fully aware of where and how you're applying them, right? Is it enough to just simply organize content into topically silos, right? Because a lot of things happen on the page level. And it's important for us to understand that not all things, just because you organize them into specific silos, that they're going to rank. And at the same time, we have to be fully aware right now, especially in the last year and then moving into 2019 plus, and that content length is not a ranking factor, that you don't need to put out 3,600 words of content to rank, right? And so we're looking at how the page is structured. We're looking if this page matches the intent of the query that's being performed, and are we providing a job for the visitor to do? Because if you're just putting out information, it doesn't really make sense if the intent is not to be informed or to learn something, right? So what we like to use internally, and I included a link here, is the web development extension for Chrome, and they have one for Firefox. And what we like to do is we like to remove CSS and get a look of at how the page is structured and how the content is presented. And the reason why we like to do this is because a lot of SEOs are super smart. There's some very brilliant people out there. And if we notice that when we look at some of our competitors, and some of these SEOs are like really, really like they have so many tricks up their sleeves. So like when we look at competitors and we're looking at like just looking at the page itself, what we assume is a heading might not be a heading at all, right? How things are styled are not how they appear. So we like to remove all the styles and look at it this way. At the same time, it also presents you with a different picture, right? And it lets you examine the page. without too many distractions. So you can then start asking yourself questions like, is this really matching query syntax, right? Or query, like if the query is, how do I get chat filters? Does this page cover that, right? And is this content covering its topic, the topic in its entirety, right? So is it just like, how do I get Snapchat filters? Is that asking, how do I get them on my phone, or how do I get custom ones designed for myself, right? So at the same time, keep that in mind, because that might lead you to needing to create additional content. At the same time, this tool is super important to us. Is another reason why it's important to us is because it provides a document outline, which for me, if I'm doing things on the run and I'm doing things really fast, this allows me to really understand how things are structured on the page level without having to like dig through all the text, especially if the page is really long or there's a lot of information on there, right? And I'm looking at headings and I'm looking at how things are organized, right? So here we're looking at like best small business credit card of March 2019, right? And look at like, they're not really following proper hierarchy guidelines, but again, that we haven't seen that affect rankings at all. But what this does show us is, look at all this content that they're and how they're organizing, right? They're using all of the proper words, cashback, customizable rewards, sign-up bonuses, right? They're covering the topic fully. The other thing that you also want to do always is you want to take a look at how the search engine is handling the result for your query, right? You want to take a look at this, because it will provide not only guidance on how the content on your page should be structured, but also what you should be optimizing towards, right? So if the page does have a featured snippet, you want to start structuring your content to accommodate that. Same thing for results that have local listings in them, right? We have a client here in Los Angeles that's a multi-location caterer, right? And we wanted him to not only show up in the local results, we also wanted him to show up under the local results. When we started looking at it, we noticed that the type of content Google is ranking or preferring for this type of result are these list style content pieces, right? So this allowed us to draw from this and to learn from this and to create content on our client side that will accommodate this, how Google is positioning content on this page. And again, this is going back to really understanding, like, hey, if the intent is to rent an apartment, right? Do you really think that your 2,300 word article on how to rank on how to rent an apartment in Dallas is really going to rent, right? Is going, and that's the $1 million question here, because you don't just want to work blindly. You don't want to put out pieces of content and say that, hey, here is information or a bunch of content about a specific topic, but that's not what Google is looking for, right? The number one result, and this goes back to like jobs to be done and then providing your user a way to do this, apartments.com, one result for this, right? And again, to show you guys that it really doesn't matter where your H1 tag sits, that it really doesn't contribute to anything as far as like I don't care if the H1 tag is the first H tag on the page, but look at all this wealth of information they're providing on this page, right? They're saying that, yeah, this is an H1, this is a page about Dallas apartments for rent, right? Look at all this, like rent range, beds, baths, interior community amenities, specialties, right? Square feet, ratings, cosmopolitan city, brimming with Texas pride. There's so much TF-IDF. There's just like so much a wealth of information on this page that it does covering this topic in its entirety on this one page. That's kind of what I want to leave you. This is my last slide. One of my favorite GIFs. My talks tend to run long, so this is good. And if you have any questions, feel free to. I created this email specifically for this talk. So if you have questions, either email me directly or at top@Arsen on Twitter.
Terrific.
And that is it. And I'm going to turn the camera back to myself.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. So much information there. Look, I've got questions already.
Okay.
it's actually an ongoing question. I get asked this a lot of times by clients and by just people who want to understand the battle that ensues between topics, between WordPress categories and WordPress tags, right? That kind of battle. What happens? How do we resolve this in an effective way? What's your take on that one, Arsen?
So we typically, you want to pick one and stick with it, right? You want, if you're going to use categories, you want those category archives, indexes, whatever you want to call them, you want them to be indexable and crawlable, right? Then your tags, if you're still going to use tags in conjunction with categories, then your tags need to be blocked, because this really just doesn't make sense for Google to crawl them. A lot of times people speak about on the smaller sites, I'm not really concerned about a crawl budget at all. John Mueller came out and said that they're really not worried about it. Now, on larger sites, sites that are million+ pages, I am concerned about crawl budgets, and I do want Google to spend time where
big e-commerce sites, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, but also WordPress sites. So we deal with some WordPress sites that are in the millions of pages, right? So it totally makes sense to optimize for that. But work from like one particular object or post can belong to multiple categories. It just makes sense, right? So at that point, you can start looking at things. Hey, how do I create a relationship between these two categories? Can this category be a subcategory, right, of my parent category? You can't do that. Then you can have a post live in multiple categories with only one permalink to that post and only one category that's showing in the breadcrumb, right? You want to see something really cool? Go to Yelp, pick one of their pages for their restaurants, right? And then send them through that structured data testing tool, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They have multiple breadcrumbs. They have posts that, so it's a restaurant, it's also in Los Angeles, but it's also a I don't know, a meat shop, whatever, right? A butcher. So you can have multiple categories, you can have multiple breadcrumbs, but to itself to Google and users.
I've got another follow-up question from that. So we see a lot of themes and also plugins that go ahead and they create the custom post types, which then obviously affects the taxonomies, right? So we see things like something like a style. It might be another thing called a style or a location or something like that, which now starts creating more URLs within the taxonomies. So now I guess the question I've sort of got is, what if perhaps some of those pages that are on those URLs from your custom post types, they're starting to rank, right? So they're starting to be appearing in search engine results. But I mean, my inclination is to go in and start cleaning up all these extra custom post types and really narrow down your, set the no index on certain taxonomies. And so there's, again, you need to, I guess, is this another case of we need to evaluate everything as we come across it? What do you think, Arsen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fairly complex question, right? To just kind of like dig in and say, oh, this is the way you should be handling it.
Yeah.
Again, case by case basis, a post is ranking, figuring out why it's ranking. If I move this post, is it going to improve it? Why are we going to move it if it is ranking, right? So again, case by case basis, ultimately it needs to be a logic needs to be applied, right? It needs to be a logical decision. Jine, how would you handle this?
Yeah, so like because I do have this experience, like because the client previously didn't work on didn't work on the structure perfectly when they build on the website, and then they come into us like they have all the tags and category and taxonomy pages are all getting indexed, and some of them actually ranking, but some of them are not. And I decided just like, for example, some tag pages, if we don't have that kind of category for that tag, then I will build a category or a subcategory, which is makes sense, that can be cover the tag pages, which is like, and then I redirect these tag pages to the new category or subcategory pages or even posts, and whichever is makes sense, and then redirect to that. And then when Google start to picking up, like, oh, this is the page, like instead of the tag pages is, or the text only pages is ranking, but actually the new pages I created, it is ranking instead of the tag pages. Then at that time, I will start no index all the things I do not want to index, but only keep the one we want to index. So that's the way I handle it, and it is successful. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
we build on a new page and actually replace the one we do not want to index. And so that, because for the tag pages and the taxonomy pages, normally not all of them are indexed, maybe just 1 or 2, or maybe just 10%. And we can just do that to create the things like the part we actually want them to be indexed and ranking. And then we just decommission all those which we do not want them to be indexed.
Perfect. Yeah. So one of the other things that Eat constantly uses a fail-safe, and we do a lot of experiments with our clients during our audits, is we will recreate the post in a different URL, and we will canonicalize the one that's ranking to the one that we created, and then for that experiment, we will change around all the internal linking and all the internal signals to the new page, and patiently wait to see if Google will pick it up based on that canonical signal, and where it's going to position that new page based on its new architecture. Obviously, it doesn't really do much for backlinks, even though there's been talk about the canonical serving as a form of a redirect, but or consolidation of authority from the backlinks. But I don't think that it's as strong as that 301 signal or the redirect signal. So we do recommend using canonicals during these experiments, especially on pages that are ranking and are making you money.
I think you did a very good call out, Arsen. Like, the canonical tag is actually just a signal, but you actually need to depend on your internal linking and all your backlinks. If a lot of backlink and all your internal linking is linking to the non-canonical section, the pages version, even though that page is canonical to the canonical link, but Google actually doesn't really rank for the canonical link. Instead, it will be indexed to the one which is not canonical too. So internal linking signal and the backlink signal is very important past canonical.
Signals. I like what you're saying, Jine, about signals. Yeah.
Because they are try and remember, right? They're only suggestions. They're not really a directive, right? Canonicals are just suggestions for Google. A lot of the sites that we deal with, Google just like completely does not care about the canonical recommendation, right? For suggestion. Wants to do, right? But yeah, canonicals have saved us. We use canonicals a lot, even during site migration, and redirects for sites that are, again, ranking and making money.
Another quick question here. This is, I mean, feel free to answer quite briefly, because we're getting towards the last 5 minutes here, but I just thought just quickly throw in. One of the audience has said, so his name is Fibrashko. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I'm sorry for pronouncing it wrong, but he's saying, how does breadcrumb affect rank on Google? So he's just saying he's new to blogging. He's just starting. It's a very beginner, but he wants to know, I guess, why. I'll interpret the question here a little bit for both of you. Why do breadcrumbs rank? What is the thing about that?
So breadcrumbs don't rank. I don't think that breadcrumbs are a ranking signal. I think breadcrumbs, and again, this is pure speculation and based off of like correlation without causation, absolutely. But in my practice, we see that breadcrumbs do help not only with creating the logical organizational structure to your website, they also help with navigational paths and showing Google that this is the way to this piece of content. And overall, it just speaks to the quality of
Yeah.
And so I don't
Yeah.
think that implementing breadcrumbs. So you can have sites. There's plenty of sites. Sorry, I'm not, there's plenty of sites that are ranking
Yes.
without breadcrumbs, right? So we can't say
You have to have breadcrumbs
look
to
at
rank.
Clutch.co. Clutch.co. Yeah, Clutch.co is ranking without. They have zero breadcrumbs, right? Or they might have now. When I was looking at it, they didn't have breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are not a ranking factor. So I wouldn't say that breadcrumbs, you need breadcrumbs to rank. You definitely don't. But breadcrumbs are a good way to show Google certain aspects of how things are structured, how content is organized, and then also showing like how many assets or how much information you have on a specific topic. Jin?
Yeah, I think I really agree. Arsen said, like breadcrumb is not a ranking signal, but your style structure, it is a ranking signal. Like how you actually present your content to Google, that's the ranking signal. So breadcrumb is actually helping you to present your site structure to Google, to let Google understand your site structure and your content more, which will help you to rank. But actually, breadcrumb is not a ranking signal though. But for example, like what Arsen just saying, that some websites just without a breadcrumb, but they still ranking good. It might be because of their site structure is already very good, and Google already understand all the site structure and the content for them. But breadcrumb, we still highly recommend it. You install it because that will be the very easy way to help you to let Google understand your website.
Well, we're heading towards the end of the last few minutes here for the webinar. So, as I've said, I like to extract every little bit of juice out of the guests on these shows, and just to get a little bit more information from you, Jin. So, I'd like to ask you, what is your 1 minute takeaway for our viewers today? What's the 1 minute? What can you just say? If they did nothing else, go ahead and do this. What would you say, Jine?
So I would say maybe not just one thing, but few things, but I can summarize in 1 minute. So I think user intent and Google, like user intent is very important. So your content's quality and the relevancy to the things you want to rank is very, very important. And also your site structure. If you can't really do that on your site URL structure, you use breadcrumb to present your site structure to Google. And also very good to you, everyone, if you are doing SEO, need to be installed, which is the web developer. And competitor analysis will be actually help you to understand your consumers' user intents.
So, well, thanks so much. And I really appreciate you coming on and joining us on the webinar. So should people connect with you on LinkedIn if they want to connect with you? Is it the best place?
Yeah, you can connect me with LinkedIn or Twitter. So if you Google Jine Wu, JINEWU, then you will see 8 out of 10 result in Google is me.
Hey, that's what we like.
Just
only
Google it.
Only
easy.
2 more to go, right? Only get the first 10.
Yep.
Thanks so much. So, Arsen, what's the 1 minute thing? What can we do? What's the best thing for people to do right now?
So I have to basically just said 2019 and beyond. I am very much at 2 things: focused on intent, really understanding why the user is performing that search, and then matching that, making sure that as the user lands on the page, and we've done these experiments, and it just works. It works every time. If somebody's searching for something specific and understanding their intent, when they land on your page, putting that right at the top and matching that works very well. And we can see that. I think it was John Mueller who came out and said that, hey, this content that you're putting at the bottom of your e-commerce pages, right, at the e-commerce category pages or your product category pages, is useless, right? We really don't need it. But we stopped doing that as a practice.
Nope. I think we're losing a connection now.
And provide that information. And stuff that basically helps the user make a decision on what's their next That translates into a better click-through. There's a long click to the site. Users don't fall back as fast. So it's just like, it's tenfold. So that's my takeaway on this.
Well, thanks so much, and appreciate everything you've done. Those slides were fantastic, and we did have during the webinar there was a few, I guess, glitches in the connection, but that's, I think, if you can make your slides available for people to download after the webinar, and they can get all that information out of the slides. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and what's the best way for people to connect with you, Arsen?
Sure, Top Hat Arsen on Twitter, and then once you have access to my slides, I have my email and everything else in there. I'll upload the slides here in a few minutes, and then how our friends at Semrush decide to distribute that information to you guys, that's how you'll get it.
Thanks so much, and yes, we need to thank Semrush for all of their support for the community. They're just doing an ongoing fantastic job for all of us to share the information. It's always been about information for me. It's why I got into SEO in the first place, was to share all this knowledge and information. So we're doing it, and thanks once again, and we will see you again on the next webinar, and bye for now.
See ya.